They were collecting $104,000 on average per month. And like this month, we will probably do, I'm on my 4th month and it's been consistent progress. What if I buy the wrong practice and there's skeletons in the closet, or the whole team leaves and I'm just left stranded? The whole time I was preparing to jump right into ownership. I didn't want to wait forever. I was thinking a year or two, just ended up finding the right opportunity that I didn't want to pass up on, and I jumped on it.
Do you ever have moments still of like, okay, well, this has been good. What if it still does fall apart?
Welcome to the Lifestyle Practice Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Derek Williams, and today I'm really excited. I've got one of my clients, Mitch Rush. So, Dr. Mitch, tell us, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. This is fun for me. This is a full circle moment. I've been listening to podcasts for like 5 or 6 years, so it's very fun to be at the point where I'm a client and I own a practice. So, very enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to have you on. It's been a lot of fun working together. I think you've done really well to balance out taking action versus asking questions. Sometimes people can kind of be on different ends of that spectrum, and that's something that's impressed me about you. So we're going to talk about a few different things today, but before we kind of get into stuff, just tell everyone listening a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? How did you get into dentistry and to the point of buying your practice?
Yeah, so I am from Highlands Ranch, Colorado. I've lived all over the place, but I always say I'm from there because it's where I've lived the longest. So moved around a lot as a kid. I'm married. My wife is also from the same spot in Colorado. And I first became interested in dentistry from my brother-in-law. He was kind of at the stage where he was getting ready to apply for dental school and kind of telling me about his vision for things. And I thought it sounded really cool. So I spent a couple of years kind of just looking into that when I was a teenager and a young college student. Had positive experience with that, and I just moved forward with it. And then I went to the University of Kentucky. That's where I first heard about TLP because during my first year, we had a really awesome business club. And you guys have kind of partnered up with that business club to get us a huge discount on the TLP Academy. And so I went through that and had a really good education out there. Moved back here as soon as I graduated. And then I was an associate for about 14 or 15 months before buying practice.
Very cool. So tell us a little bit about the practice. How, like 14 or 15 months in, like you had to have had a mindset, I would think, of like ownership relatively early. So what was that process like for you?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about ownership before I even applied to dental school. I wasn't thrilled about getting into a profession where it was all going super corporate, super DSO heavy. And so I talked to a lot of business owners saying like, hey, like family practice is well and alive and it's still worth it to do that. And so I pursued that. So because I was doing TLP as a D1 and all the way through dental school, like listening to the podcast, I was learning about what steps I would need to take. So I was prepared to get out of school and learn as many skills as I could as an associate as quickly as possible, and also be saving up cash to just have some working capital to purchase a practice. I remember listening to a podcast, I think it was you and Steve, talking about how you guys in dental school, you guys looked at hundreds of prospectuses before you started to understand them. And I was like, that's insane. Like I'll never be there. And then, during those 14, 15 months of being an associate, I got to that point where I had been through enough practices that I was understanding the financials. And so that whole time I was looking for the right opportunity. I wasn't sure if I was going to partner with the dentist that I was working for as an associate or if I was going to find something else. But the whole time I was preparing to jump right into ownership. I didn't want to wait forever. I was thinking a year or two, and just ended up finding the right opportunity that I didn't want to pass up on, and I jumped on it.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it doesn't take too long, but yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is just sticking with it. Keep looking and not kind of just jumping at the first good opportunity. I mean, it's similar to like anything that you're like really excited to buy. Like it's tempting to be like, oh, I think I found something really special here relatively quickly.
Yeah. And my span was huge. It was like a 2-hour span of a radius in each direction. And I slowly just narrowed it down. I found some good places on the outskirts of that, but I just started to think like, what do I really want in the end? And that kind of led me to feel like, okay, I really want to be 30 minutes within this area. And so I had to narrow it down, and I found something good.
Okay. I want to ask, there's a few questions that I've thought about and kind of want to go through, but now looking back, like what is one of the greatest fears that you had when you were buying your practice that you may not have wanted to like talk through or like share with others, or something that was just kind of like looming in the back of your mind? I don't know if you've thought through like some of those fears.
Yeah, I think like in the back of your mind, you're always thinking to yourself, like, what if this just fails? Like, I know like banks love to give dentists loans because it's a very high success rate, but like, you're always like, what if I'm the one that doesn't work out, right? And what if I buy the wrong practice and there's skeletons in the closet, or the whole team leaves and I'm just left stranded? Because you hear really tough stories. And I wanted to find the right opportunity where I could come in and grow it and have a good team and hit the ground running. So, I mean, I was just nervous about making the wrong decision. I feel like I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I wanted to have the perfect opportunity, but that just doesn't exist. So, when you find a good opportunity or a great opportunity, it's just like the what if that really was bothering me in the back of my mind.
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone has that idea, like, oh, it could just completely fall apart as soon as I get in there. And one of the tricky parts is just with the team, because we want to lead and we want to push, but we also know that we need the teams that are already there. So talk a little bit through that. Like, what was your expectation, and kind of were there any things that surprised you about that relationship, working with a team that had already been in place?
Yeah. So there were already 4 or 5 people in the office who had been there for a while. One hygienist had been there for 20 years. She'd been there her whole career. The office manager had been there for 2.5 years. Another hygienist 5 years. So like, people had a lot more experience in the practice than I did, just stepping in as a newbie. And I wanted to win them over. I wanted to make them feel very secure that I wasn't coming in to slash and burn the practice and turn it into something completely new. I wanted to buy something that was already functional, that I could grow. And so you and I spent a lot of time talking about how to win the team over, how to make them feel very safe and secure. And so that's what the whole goal was. What surprised me was they ended up being a little easier to win over than I expected. I was expecting a ton of resistance. This young, fairly fresh out of school guy coming in and just, who's this guy buying the practice? And something super unfortunate happened. There's always something that goes wrong when you're buying a practice, and a sales rep came in who like had some knowledge that I was buying the practice before I even bought it, and walked in. This was like probably 2.5, 3 weeks before I was supposed to buy it, and just went up to the front desk and said, "Hey, is Dr. Rush here? I'd love to talk to him." And they're like, "Who's Dr. Rush?" And they're like, "The guy who's buying this." And everybody panicked. They're like, "I think we're being sold." And it freaked me out. I was like, crap, I'm going to lose half the team. The seller who I was talking a lot with was like, "Yeah, they're honestly freaking out. Like, we got to stabilize this." So I like sent over a bunch of treats. I was like, "So sorry you found out about it this way. I really wanted to make a good first impression." Went in, met them the next day. Things calmed down a lot easier than I thought they would. And just jumping in, starting working. The first couple of weeks, it was me really doing a lot of work to win them over, but they were more eager and more willing to embrace that change than I expected, which was great.
Yeah. It's tough. Those types of things happen at times. And that's one of those times that you have to just be able to kind of like react quickly. You have to be able to kind of be on your feet and be like, okay, this is what it is. Here's where we go from here. It reminds me of like some of the best golfers focus on, if they hit a bad shot, they don't let that replay over and over in their mind. They're just thinking about, now where do they have to hit from, and what's the best play from there. And so
I'm getting in my head and just be like, I get to choose how I react here. I can let this like freak me out and let me panic over this, but it's going to do no good. And I was able, fortunately, to get into the right mindset going into that. But I feel like that's super important in dentistry, to just have like a stable mindset that you can fall back on when things go wrong.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And it's a good example. Like there's things that you can kind of learn on the fly and do, but I think the things that you can't learn on the fly are like your personality traits, core values, things that are very important to you. That those are not things that you can make changes very quickly. Like, you are who you are in that respect. So kind of interesting. So, okay, what was the biggest gap between kind of what you imagined ownership would feel like and what it actually was like?
Yeah, I was fully prepared to be hit by a lot of things that I didn't know, that I'd have to figure out kind of on the fly, like you were saying, and to be a lot busier than I was as an associate. But you don't know what you don't know. and getting into it, I was like, wow, there's just a lot more admin tasks hitting me. Like the first 2.5 months, it's just, you're getting pelted with random things that you got to figure out how to do. It's like hazardous waste disposal, it's like payroll, all these tax things, just so much paperwork, and then like managing everything that you were already managing before clinically. So it just, things have started to calm down. I'm at 4 months now, coming up on 4 months, and so things have started to slow down now, and that feels amazing. But and also I feel like my tolerance has gotten higher for like just that workload. Like you start to adjust. But I just remember coming home very tired, and we'd put my kid down, my wife and I would sit on the couch, and I'd just be like ready to fall asleep instantly. So just the admin tasks, honestly, the never ending to-do list of things that like you want to do, and it's prioritizing them and getting to them in the right order.
Yeah. It makes me think, like, I often hear, and I've experienced it firsthand, like just how much there is going on during the first few months, and I mean even the first year. A lot of times when people reach out to me and ask about coaching, one of the common questions I get is like, well, should I wait until things like calm down to then start coaching, or like is it beneficial first to start? And everybody can kind of make their own decisions, of course, but what's your take on that now, being a little bit through some of the busiest, most chaotic things? Like if you look back, would you say, oh, maybe it would have been better to postpone coaching just to kind of work through those initial things? Or did you feel like it was beneficial?
No, like for sure, there's never going to be a perfect time to like buy a practice, to start coaching. If I waited 2 more years to just have more experience under my belt, to be a little bit faster clinically, to be a better leader, whatever that means, like I'd be in the exact same boat. Honestly, like I feel like you want to move quickly. You want to learn as you go, because there's just never a perfect time. So I was very glad to have support from you along the way. Like when things like that went wrong, where the staff found out about me buying the practice earlier than I was expecting, or just so many early challenges, it was so nice to have somebody to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah. That's a good perspective. Talk to me about, you've kind of talked about this mindset of like, okay, I like being a perfectionist, or like wanting everything to be all buttoned up from the beginning and stuff like that. So talk to me about that and what that's been like. Have you had to change, or like where have you had to make compromises so far at this point in the game?
Yeah, like I because I've been thinking about ownership for 6+ years and getting excited about that and wanting to move forward with it, I've had a lot of ideas in the back of my head about, this is how I would handle marketing. This is what I want my website to look like. This is what I want my office to look like. These are the systems I want to put in place, right? And stepping into it, I've just had to realize like everything in its due time. You cannot tackle everything at once, and there's no need to. Like things are functional, things are operational right now. I don't need every single piece of equipment that I want. I don't need every system in place. Let's hit the big ones first. And so you've been very helpful with prioritizing that for me and helping me like tackle some of the low-hanging fruit, hit the biggest problems first. And I've become more and more okay with pacing myself. Like I'm in this for the long run. I don't plan on selling anytime soon. Like I have no idea what the next 10, 20, 30 years are going to look like. And we're already moving super fast. We're moving crazy fast. Like if I step back out of it and just kind of look at it from an objective perspective, we have made crazy progress. And so like just, when we get on phone calls and we're able to have that conversation, you remind me like you're moving crazy fast. Like that just puts everything in perspective for me.
Yeah, that's cool. It is fun. It's one of those time periods where sometimes like you can look back and it feels like it's been a long time, but it's also like kind of gone fast. And so even with like the progress that you've made has been very rapid, and we've made some right changes. And it's really one thing that's been really enjoyable in my relationship with you is that like our calls were always like, okay, what's the low hanging fruit? Focus just on that. And that's what I think you're saying is that, the perfectionist wants to address everything. And what's interesting is that if that's your approach and you're trying to do everything, then in some ways, like you make just a little bit of progress on so many different things that sometimes it just doesn't even move the needle. Yeah. So finding that low hanging fruit, the high ROI items, and putting all of your energy into those, you get so much more progress. And I think you've just been stellar at that. So let's talk through a little bit more. in that regard, making changes and stuff like that, because, well, I don't want to take the words for you. I want you to kind of explain your side of it. But there's kind of this spectrum of how conservative do we be to try and retain team and like not make changes too rapidly to ruffle feathers and stuff. But then also like the other end of the spectrum to like not take things slower than we need to. So what's been your perspective in kind of working through that? What did you start out with as far as that in mindset, and how have you changed, if so?
Yeah, I remember an early conversation with you before I had closed on the practice, talking through meeting the team and how I wanted to present myself at taking over the practice. And what I had always been told is you want to go a little slow in the beginning. You want the staff to feel very secure and stable. And so I was like, well, maybe I go in and I tell everybody that I'm not going to make any changes for the first 4 to 6 months. Nobody's job is on the line here. Like, I want to learn your systems. I want to see how you guys do things. And then we'll start tackling some change. And I remember you pausing and telling me, like, if you say that, they will hold you to that. So you maybe want to give yourself a little bit more leeway and see how they feel. And that was great advice, because when I got in, they were actually very ready for change, which surprised me. The office was associate run. So there was kind of an owner doctor who was in his own second practice. That was his baby. And this was just kind of his side practice. And so not a super hands-on approach. And because of that, the staff were pretty much running the whole office. And when I got in and there was actually an owner who like was very present, very hands-on, they were like, okay, we're ready for change. Like now that somebody's here. And so that, like, we just took off running with that. And we tried to pace ourselves, but they've been more ready for change and for kind of growth than I expected.
Yeah, it's interesting. What you kind of just explained to me is like one thing when I'm looking at life is if I'm debating between different decisions, I try and think, okay, which of these two options provides me the most freedom in the future? And so sometimes, even though your thought process was, in my opinion, like correct, like, hey, let's like be conservative in how we go into this. At the same time, don't necessarily want to hold ourselves to it. We could take a staff that's totally ready for change and then put the narrative in their mind that, we're not going to change anything. And then we were like, oh, well, maybe we do want to, and they would have been okay with it. So it's continuing to keep the freedom there. So we kind of laid the groundwork as far as the mindset, but didn't commit to a specific timeline. And then that ended up really working to your benefit, because there was some tough things that we had to do kind of like right out of the gate. So talk through firing your first employee, what that was like.
Yeah, so I was really hoping I'd be the exception to the rule and that everybody would be able to stay on for a long time. I wouldn't have any turnover. Turns out I'm not the exception to the rule. So while, I started with 4 employees, we just had 1 assistant, and we were growing very quickly. I needed to get another assistant in, but the original assistant just was the main source of my stress, my problems. I feel like I have a fairly stable emotional state. I'm able to handle stress fairly well without like taking it out on other people or like letting it really show to patients if I'm feeling stressed. But I felt like I was constantly managing this employee's stress for them because they didn't have that regulation as much. And it was just impacting everybody. It was impacting patients and our workflow. And I was having the same conversations over and over with that employee. And I really, really liked that employee as a person and wanted them to succeed and wanted them to thrive. But I could just see, like, after the conversations we were having, the next day we'd be right back in the same boat. And so you and I were talking through that and just came to the conclusion, like, change needed to happen. Fortunately, I hired a second assistant. And so there's a little bit of overlap there. And then I was able to fire that 1 employee. And interestingly enough, it won me a ton of respect from the team because at the time, I was the youngest person in the office, brand new. And so I could see how they would, feel like maybe I'd be a little bit of a pushover or too lenient or whatever. And the office manager, was helping me with the firing process. And at the last minute, they almost wanted to back out because they felt bad. And I was like, no, we both are on the same page here. We feel like we need to move forward with this. And I went for it. And then afterward, they were like, wow, I really respect that decision that you made. Like, that was the hard decision, but it was the right decision. And then every day after that, the staff have commented about just like how peaceful it feels, how it was the hard decision, but it was the right decision. And the culture has just improved. So it was tough. Like, it was definitely stressing me out in the moment having to let somebody go. I feel like now that I've ripped that Band-Aid off, and I've hired 2 new assistants at this point. So now we have 2. And so I've hired 2 people. I fired somebody. It's just built my confidence up knowing that, it's not the end of the world. I want to keep people as long as possible. I want to hire the right people and have a great team around me. But it's a job, and jobs come and go. So not the end of the world.
Yeah. It is tough. There's like a lot of nerves and different emotions in place, but I was impressed with how you handled yourself and like kind of committed. And it wasn't, sometimes you can be in that position and be like, oh, I'm a boss now. Like I can fire someone. And like, there's almost an ego that kind of comes out. And I didn't sense that at all in you. It was like pretty level headed, wanting to make sure that it was the right decision. And once you made that decision, it was just this like kind of calm confidence moving forward with it. Okay, so you fired one person, but everyone else remained. What are areas that you have received some pushback on certain things, and how have you managed that?
Yeah. So being the young new guy, my office manager had, in her prior job, she had worked with a new grad who bought a practice straight out of school. And I don't know all the details, but it apparently didn't go well. And so she was really hesitant with me coming in because she thought it would just be a repeat experience. And so like when I was introducing some of the new ideas about how I like to do things, there was just some pushback, maybe a little bit of eye rolling, you could tell there was a little bit of attitude there with that, which is understandable now that I know the context. So I was just really trying. The first month was about winning staff over, winning patients over. And as I built trust, they saw that I really cared about them and I cared about our patients. It didn't take long to build that trust, and we started to work together better. And now I feel like that trust is very well established, and we have an awesome team. And I get like that office manager I work with very well, and we're a pretty tight-knit team.
That's awesome. That's another one of those things that can't be built quickly. I mean, even though it is relatively quick for the first few months, and it's just is part of who you are. Like you can only fake stuff like that for so long, and to make it really work, like you have to kind of both feel like you're genuine and you're aligned in your efforts and everything. Is there a mistake that you can evaluate or look at that you think has cost the practice or would have cost you if it hadn't been fixed at this point?
I guess 2 things come to mind. So first is not establishing the right core values and culture early on. So like day one, before I had even bought the practice, there was a staff meeting scheduled to happen like the week before I bought it. And so I decided I was going to go in and just have that staff meeting, because the next week I was going to be the owner. So what the heck, why would I miss a chance to train the team and get to know them better? And so I just came in and we talked about core values, and we talk about it every single week. And we talk about it during every single team training. And that establishing like expectations of how we were going to act in the office and what was appropriate behavior and what was not. That's why I felt like I had the confidence to fire that first employee, because the expectation was set. We agreed on it and they agreed on it and they thought it was great, but they weren't meeting it. And so then I could just move forward with that without guilt of like, hey, we've had these conversations enough times, expectations are set. So that was super helpful for me. The other thing is, I feel like we would not be doing nearly as well right now if I had failed to kind of win over staff and also patients, because those two go together. The patients can feel if you've won over the staff or not because of the way that they talk about you before you get into the room to do a hygiene check, or before you see a restorative patient when the assistant's been talking to them, right? So once the staff had been kind of won over and engaged in the process, like they were just speaking highly of me and priming patients to like accept this new doctor. And this practice has a ton of history. It's been around for a long time. Some patients have been here for like moving around between wherever the doctors were in these practices for like 40 plus years. So I'm coming into a ton of like context, and there was an associate who only lasted 5 months right before me. And so like a lot of these patients have seen 4 dentists in the past like 4 years. And so that's a lot. You want something consistent. So if I had walked in and failed to like win them over, maybe like I'm sick of seeing a new dentist every time. And so just like letting them know I'm here for the long run, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to be their new go-to person who wants to take care of and who cares about them as a person was huge.
Yeah. I remember kind of talking through that. There's pros and cons to it, but in some ways, like it can be a good opportunity to buy a practice that has been associate driven, where you can come in and you can be like, hey, I'm here for the long haul. It's good. It's good for the patients and the staff. The well, I guess I'll let you say first.
I think there was maybe a little bit more work to do because some of the systems that were in place were like almost accidental. Like it was just like, hey, this is how we do things out of necessity. So maybe more like it requires more intention on my part to like get our systems where they should be. And like certain things in the office are a little bit more run down than they would be if like an owner was there who like really was hands-on and cared about it. But I don't feel like that's been detrimental. I feel like overall, it's been actually a huge plus for me because I've been able to step in and kind of be the good guy who's like, hey, like we've got this now. Like we're gonna be stable. We're gonna be here a long time. We're gonna take good care of you and have a hands-on approach. So I've gotten mostly very positive feedback from patients and staff about it.
Yeah, very cool. I'm not even going to add anything because that's exactly the same thought process that I was going to share. So let's talk through, I have a question. Was there a moment where like getting an outside perspective to help you see something that you couldn't see yourself? Can you think of an example of that and how you find that balance of valuing the way that you see it versus getting outside perspective? And like, do you get anyone's perspective? And like, how do you weigh out like which perspective that is shared with you is possibly holds more weight in how you're going to make decisions?
Yeah, I think for sure you have to be true to yourself. Like number one, like you have to feel the confidence to move forward with what feels right in your heart and know what your core values are and stick to that. But I can't stress enough how important it's been to me in my journey in dentistry to be surrounded by people who are smarter than me, people who are farther along in their journey than me, and just people who have accomplished what I hope to accomplish. And fortunately, I have a lot of people like that, you being one of them. And I trust you because I've been engaging with your philosophy and your thought process for a long time. So like we kind of interesting, like we had trust before we even like really met in person. Cause you spoke to my dental school, like on a Zoom call when I was a D1 and I was like, wow, this guy's awesome. And I'd already listened to your podcast. So that helped a bunch. And so we've been able to move forward knowing that I trust your judgment and then also kind of balance that with my own opinion and what feels right. I also have some family who are dentists who I really trust, and I'm trying to think of a specific moment. I think one that comes to mind was when we first started working together, when I was kind of in the purchasing process. I was really ready to buy a practice. Like I had a lot of pre-owner angst of like, I'm ready to move forward. A few other opportunities had kind of slipped through my fingers. And so I didn't want to let this one slip through. And so I put in an LOI pretty early and I had kind of committed to that. And then as I started to dig into it deeper, I was like, I wonder if I'm overpaying for this practice. Like, I wonder if I can negotiate this down a little bit. And you were like, I talked to you about it. You're like, honestly, you've put in the LOI. How would you feel if this opportunity did slip through your fingers and if you changed the price and kind of lost trust with the seller? I was like, honestly, I'd be so devastated if I didn't get this one. This one feels like the one. And so I didn't change that. I was like, okay, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for the right opportunity. And I haven't looked back on that at all with regret. It was the right call. Sure, like maybe if I'd gotten into it a little bit earlier, I might have negotiated more, but it just kind of happened how it happened. And I felt very validated in purchasing this practice.
Yeah. Good thoughts. I like that. You're fortunate. It's interesting. Like we can kind of look at where we're at in life and there's certain things that we can take credit for. But I mean, for 99% of us listening to this podcast, just being born in the United States, I think gives you like I was looking a couple weeks ago at a chart and it showed out of everywhere, the number of babies that are born every year, you have a 3% chance of being born in the United States. And so, I mean, that from the very beginning puts you in a very small category. But then having family members that are well educated and that are professional and that are driven and that are responsible just easily puts you even higher. And then for you to be able to put yourself in a position to go through dental school and all of these different things we're very, very fortunate. And so it's cool to hear you talk through that. And I think it's just another opportunity to kind of be grateful for what we can do on our own, but also acknowledging all the help that we've kind of got along the way and continue to get daily. So what is the difference, do you think, between having ideas and on your own and kind of following through versus having someone hold you accountable and then, maybe even bringing more clarity to those ideas?
Yeah, well, I have a lot of ideas, but I don't have time to do all of them or do them all well. And so I love being able to like come to you with ideas and then talk through what's highest value, what's highest ROI. But I also don't have perfect execution. And so the biggest benefit of having a coach who holds you accountable is just not getting sidetracked, not going off on these little like side quests that are going to take you away from the main thing, and getting an outside perspective of your blind spots. Because my mind is constantly running at like 100% with like so many variables and different things about the business and about patients. And so I know I'm not seeing 100% of the picture, and you are very good at helping me hone in on what my blind spots are.
Yeah, good thoughts. Always helpful. And again, kind of like one of the things that I was sharing at the beginning, but kind of finding that balance. How do you put stock into your own actions and doing what you can, and then also kind of taking outside opinions and like kind of going back to the drawing board and asking questions and doing that process. There's so much to be said about finding the balance between us, because most people can be on anywhere on the spectrum, but neither end of the spectrum. Like if you have so much action but not a whole lot of thought process, we all know a lot of people like that are very like, they work super hard, but you just never see them like really making a whole lot of momentum. And then on the other end, where people are like deliberate about everything and don't take hardly any action, hone those both in and balance them out with each other is kind of the best way to make the best out of that. As we're kind of wrapping up, there's kind of like one last question, and then kind of just talk about where you see the practice going after the progress so far. What was the first kind of like measurable win that gave you confidence that you were like on the right path? Like, you started out with like the fear, like, what if this all completely falls apart? So what was the first thing that was like, oh, okay, like this is actually going pretty well? What was that, and how did it feel to be in that kind of position?
Yeah. So I was fully prepared to come in and have it take 3 months, 6 months, somewhere in that range for me to kind of be producing what the previous owner was producing. And my first month, I came in and produced 20% more than that. And it's only gone up from there. Then after that, I was like, okay, well, we did this our first month, but what if my second month, what if that was just a fluke and there was a lot of like work waiting to be done? Second month, third month, fourth month, like we've just continued to go up, and they were collecting $104,000 on average per month. And like this month, we will probably do 135, 140. So just to like, I'm on my fourth month, and it's been consistent progress. And like every month, like when I talk to the office manager, when I talk to my wife about what our numbers are, they're like, we're breaking records every single month. And that's so validating to me to have measurable growth.
Yeah, it's interesting that like the staff or other people kind of recognize the wins too. And there's just this energy that's like, oh, wow. Oh, like our patients are enjoying this. Like, oh, we're getting good outcomes. And it's just like, it's this positive feedback loop where you can really just continue to grow from it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Do you ever have moments still of like, okay, well, this has been good, but like, what if it still does fall apart?
I mean, yeah, like each month gets a little bit better where I start to feel less like that. But I do, like in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, well, what if, there was a lot of work waiting to be done and I'm just seeing patients for the first time. I'm diagnosing it through my lens of how I like to, comprehensively treat patients. What if it starts to fall off? And I mean, sure, that's possible, but I brought in a lot of new procedures, and some of the previous dentists haven't been as personable. And so like we have a lot of good things going for us, and I have big visions and goals, and I feel like our production will keep going up, our overhead will keep going down, and that's the main goal.
Yeah. It's even for me, I don't know. It's interesting because you say, well, there's the thought, what if I just have like kind of this backlog of patients and work? And what's interesting is that 2 years from now, you can have the same sentiment, but just in a different way. It can be like, oh, the area, like there's just kind of like this area is growing, like what if it stops? Or it can be, oh, the economy's doing well, but like what's going to happen next year? So it's, it's interesting that it's like, sure, there's external factors, but a lot of it just has to do with your mindset and preparing and helping yourself continue to feel free and like you have options and stuff. So I went through that still like several years in. And I think another reason to push for financial independence, because once you can reach financial independence, it doesn't mean you have to stop working. You can keep working. You can do it as long as you want, but there's a different feeling doing it because you're kind of feeling like you want to and you enjoy things and it's your balance in life. And it takes kind of a lot of those kind of concerns away. So beneficial there. Okay. So I guess if there's anything else that you want to say about your experience so far, you can add it. And then just kind of like, maybe you kind of talked about how like you initially started out thinking, okay, like I want to give myself several months to just kind of get back up, to be able to build up to where this practice was at. You're kind of blowing all of that out of the water. So what do you do now with the vision and kind of pushing and moving forward?
Yeah. So I remember kind of setting goals with you before I had closed on the practice about what I wanted to do. And I kind of had a stretch goal in mind of like, it was a big stretch. And I remember we talked about it and we're like, yeah, that's a big stretch, but worth it to have a goal that stretches you rather than shooting too low. And my goal for the practice is, so I bought it when it was collecting 1.25 million a year. And then my stretch goal was 1.75. And I'd love to get the overhead down, long term. Eventually, I'd love to have the overhead be at 50%. And that's kind of the long-term vision. I feel like the growth that we're seeing now, by the end of a year, we could be at the point where, on a monthly basis, we're doing what we need to have that happen. We might not get there this year, but the following year, the systems might be in place where we're able to do that. And that would be incredible. I'd feel very satisfied and accomplished. But I've just been super happy with the growth that I've seen at this point, and I'm enjoying the journey. I think if I have anything to add, it would just be that we spend so much time anticipating the future, and it's like these little hits of dopamine of like, oh, I can't wait until I'm an owner, I can't wait until I'm in dental school, I can't wait until I retire. And the grass is never as green on the other side as you hope it'll be, but the journey is like the work is the reward and the obstacle is the way. Those are great phrases that I've heard that I've tried to embrace, and I'm just trying to remember to soak this up. My first year of ownership is something I've anticipated for a decade, and now I'm here, and it's enjoyable, it's fun, it's stressful, all of the above. And I just can't stress how important it is to be in that moment and embrace it for what it is.
Incredible. Actually got me like a little bit teary-eyed right now. That was really good. I mean, you're right. I mean, even there is an argument to be made, even if the grass is greener on the other side, you can't experience the grass on the other side. All you can experience is the grass that's here right now. And so there's just, such good thoughts. And once again, just a shout out to you. I think you deserve all the success that you've achieved. You work your butt off each month. You come to our calls prepared with a lot of action items followed up on. You're great at kind of like texting in between to make sure that we have good communication and keeping yourself accountable. And I think there's that all of those things are great, but the fact that you can also remember what's really important in the midst of that like a big whirlwind of a storm and that in through the whole beginning of this process is really incredible, and continues to just give me a lot of confidence that you're just going to go far and continue to see whatever you want to in the path that's coming. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to kind of to prep and to have this conversation and to share your thoughts. If there's anyone listening that's like, hey, I want to reach out and ask Mitch a question, are you okay with that? What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help. So many people have helped me on my journey. So definitely happy to be a resource. My email is mitchellsrush@gmail.com, or you can look us up. My practice is Orchard Dental Care in Denver, Colorado.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mitch. Take care. And to everyone listening, I hope that you've enjoyed this and got a lot of good things out of it, because I know I did. So take care. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Talk to you later.